Good morning. It is Friday, December the 24th, Christmas Eve, and this is The Drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the declaration of spiritual warfare, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have, let's see here, it is going to be the Alien and Sedition Acts, Declaration of War, CBD, the Federalist Papers, On Liberty, and Against the Tide. All that and more when I come back. Thank you. Now the declaration for spiritual warfare for December 23rd. I have given you my wisdom. Let all the people, all the inhabitants of the world, give ear and hear my wisdom. Let them hear and understand my parables of the kingdom. I will give you the spirit of wisdom and revelation in my knowledge, and I will let the eyes of your understanding be enlightened to know the hope of my calling and the riches of the glory of my inheritance. I store up sound wisdom for the upright, and I am a shield to those who walk uprightly. I will teach you in the way of wisdom and will lead you in right paths. Psalm 49, 1 through 4, Ephesians 1, 17 through 18, Proverbs 2, verse 7, and chapter 4, verse 11. Prayer declaration. Let wisdom and knowledge be my stability and strength of salvation, and the fear of the Lord my treasure. You have filled me with your spirit in wisdom and understanding, in knowledge and all manner of workmanship. Happy are your servants who stand continually before you and hear your wisdom. And that was the daily declaration for spiritual warfare for December 23rd. First of all, Merry Christmas to you and your loved ones. In these times when liberty is at maximum danger, I wish you a season of love, liberty, and peace. In that spirit, James Madison left us a pretty timeless gift on Christmas Eve in 1798 that I'd like to share with you today. Resolutions drafted by the father of the Constitution and passed by Virginia on December 21st and 24th, 1798, answer a timeless question. What do we do when the federal government oversteps its constitutional bounds? All too often, we simply ignore unconstitutional federal overreach. but James Madison had other ideas. Madison insisted states are duty-bound to interpose and arrest the progress of the evil. He made this emphatic statement in the Virginia Resolutions of 1798, a document he drafted in response to the Alien and Sedition Acts. Within a decade of the ratification of the Constitution, the federal government was already testing the limits of its authority. During the summer of 1798, Congress passed, and President John Adams signed into law, 4 acts together known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. The winds of war blowing across the Atlantic, the Federalist Party majority wrote the laws to prevent seditious acts from weakening the U.S. government. Federalists utilized fear of the French to stir up support for these draconian laws, expanding federal power, concentrating authority in the executive branch, and severely restricting freedom of speech. 2 of the Alien Acts gave the president the power to declare foreign U.S. residents an enemy, lock them up, and deport them. These acts vested judicial authority in the executive branch and obliterated due process. The Sedition Act essentially outlawed criticizing the federal government, a clear violation of the First Amendment. Recognizing the grave dangers these acts posed to the basic constitutional structure, Thomas Jefferson and Madison drafted resolutions that were passed by the Kentucky and Virginia legislatures in November and December of 1798, respectively. The Principles of 98 formalized the principles of nullification as the rightful remedy when the federal government oversteps its authority. After Governor Girard signed the Kentucky resolutions on November 16th, Jefferson sent a draft to Madison, writing, quote, "I enclose you a copy of the draft of the Kentucky Resolves. I think we should distinctly affirm all the important principles they contain so as to hold to that ground in the future and leave the matter in such a train as we may not be committed to absolutely push the matter to extremities and yet may be free to push as far as events will render prudent," unquote. Madison did just that, drafting his own resolutions for introduction in the Virginia legislature. The Virginia Resolutions of 1798 declared the Alien and Sedition Acts unconstitutional. Madison also asserted that the states had an obligation to act against egregious federal exercises of undelegated power. That this assembly doth explicitly and peremptorily declare that it views the powers of the federal government as resulting from the compact, to which the states are parties, as limited by the plain sense and intention of the instrument constituting the compact, as no further valid than they are authorized by the grants enumerated in that compact, and that in case of a deliberate, palpable, and dangerous exercise of other powers not granted by the said compact, the states who are parties thereto have the right and are duty-bound to interpose for arresting the progress of the evil and for maintaining within their respective limits the authorities, rights, and liberties appertaining to them. Madison gave this draft of the Virginia resolutions to Wilson Carey Nicholas, who showed them to Jefferson. In a letter dated November 29, 1798, Jefferson recommended adding more emphatic language in declaring the Alien and Sedition Acts unconstitutional. Quote, "The more I've reflected on the phrase in the paper you showed me, the more strongly I think it should be altered. Suppose you were to, instead of the invitation to cooperate in the annulment of the acts, to make it an invitation, quote, to concur with this Commonwealth in declaring, as it does hereby declare, that the said acts are, and were ab initio, null, void, and of no force or effect," unquote. "I should like it better. Health and happiness and adieu," unquote. Nicholas added words declaring that the Alien and Sedition Acts were unconstitutional, not law, but utterly null, void, and of no force or effect. John Taylor of Carolina introduced Madison's resolutions with Nicholas' edition on December 10, 1798. He described the resolutions as a rejection of the false choice between timidity and civil war. Taylor argued that the state nullification provided an alternative to popular nullification, in other words, outright armed rebellion. In legislative debates, he argued, the will of the people was better expressed through organized bodies dependent on that will than by tumultuous meetings, that thus the preservation of peace and good order would be more secure. Unquote. In the course of the debate, Jefferson's suggested wording was removed. during the period following passage of the Alien and Sedition Acts, there was talk of an outright revolution. Both the Kentucky and Virginia legislatures went to great pains to strike a balance between a hard line and moderation. They wanted to make their point, but they did not want to spark violence. Removing Jefferson's wording did not change the substance of the resolutions. In fact, declaring a law unconstitutional, as the final draft of the resolutions did, was essentially the same as calling it null, void, and of no effect. Alexander Hamilton inferred this distinction during the New York ratification debate. Quote, "The acts of the United States, therefore, will be absolutely obligatory as to all the proper objects and powers of the general government. But the laws of Congress are restricted to certain sphere, and when they depart from this sphere, they are no longer supreme or binding." Unquote. The Virginia House of Delegates passed the resolutions on December 21st, 1798, by a vote of 100 to 63. The Senate followed suit on December 24 by a 14 to 3 margin. Taken together, the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions lay out the principles of nullification, but they did not actually nullify the Alien and Sedition Acts. These non-binding resolutions merely made the case and set the stage for further action. Correspondence between Jefferson and Madison indicates they didn't plan to stop with the resolutions. They hoped to use them as a springboard for state action against the unconstitutional Alien and Sedition Acts. So I hope you enjoyed the article, and again, Merry Christmas. Thank you. I was listening to Dan Bongino, and he had a guest on, and the guest was talking about a particular time in his life. Actually, it was while he was serving in the military, and he was an F-16 pilot, been in combat, and he was returning and taking a flight to Michigan, and on the plane was, in first class, was the twin of a soldier that was killed in combat and whose remains were in the plane or on the flight. So when the plane got to its destination, the pilot came out over the last speaker and says, as a courtesy and respect, will you please remain seated until the corporal's remains have been removed from the plane? And this F-16 pilot noted that approximately half of the people didn't do that. They stayed seated, or didn't stay seated. They left the plane. And he said that the way he felt was he disappointed to be an American. And what this amounts to is a complaint. And again, it's a bit of a problem because this is what happens on the radio. I was listening to the radio all day today, and all I heard was whiny complaint after whiny complaint after whiny complaint. And nobody was talking about how we got into the position that we've gotten into and what it is that we should do next. What's the remedy, so to speak? And for this particular situation, which no one had respect, the first thing I thought about was, well, gee, that's unpatriotic, it's rude, and those people should be subjected to social they should be socially ostracized. So, but then I realized, well, wait a minute. Their response is going to be, I don't like this war. I don't want anything to do with this war, and I don't want to acknowledge the war or any of the results of this particular war. And then that's what really reminded me that the war in Afghanistan, so-called war, it was a military operation. And it was the same thing in Iraq. It was military operations. And so Operation Enduring Freedom and all these different military operations. There was no declared war in Afghanistan. There was no declared war in Iraq. I don't care why. As far as I'm concerned, it is illegal. It is in violation of the Constitution. Sean Hannity and all the people that say that it is are wrong. Okay? And had we had a declaration of war, were we in an actual state of war, then these individuals that got up and left would be socially ostracized. There would be no excuse. They can't say, well, I disapprove of what's going on. It doesn't matter. You were outvoted. The rest of us voted to go to war, and you're going to respect that, or you're going to suffer the consequences. Okay, so again, to sum up, this respect that was done to a soldier and his twin brother happened because we did not declare war in Afghanistan or in Iraq. In this particular case, I believe they were coming home from Afghanistan. We did not declare war. That's why these people were free to walk off the plane without fear of any social consequences whatsoever. And so the remedy is we make sure that the next time that any troops are sent into combat, that we have a declaration of war in place. The whole purpose of a declaration of war is to unite the country. We are naturally loosely united. We have 50 separate but equal states, 3 separate but equal branches of government, and war is one of the things that has served in the past to unite the country. World War I, World War II, in which we were all united. Because again, this kind of behavior where people are standing up and disrespecting the service of a soldier, especially a soldier that has given the last full measure of devotion, to quote Abraham Lincoln, would be absolutely unacceptable. Those folks would be subjected to, they wouldn't even dare, let's put it that way, because the backlash would have been so severe, the social backlash would have been so severe, they wouldn't even think about it in World War II. And why? What was different? In World War II, it was a declared war. We were all in it together and united. And so again, the war, getting a declared war, making sure we commit no troops to combat without a declaration of war is the solution to this obvious disrespect. Thank you. Watching a CNBC program because, this being Christmas Eve, there is the Wall Street's closed, and so the usual program, Squawk Box and whatnot, are off. But anyways, so it's called Streets of Dreams, and it's a CNBC thing, and it's all about CBD. And it's a play-up. It's a promotion of CBD. Make no mistake about it. This is not, he tries to pretend he's being objective about it, but he's not. He promotes the use of CBD. One of the parts of that, one of the ways he's promoting this is with the military. So there's a guy, he's talking to a young-looking guy. He doesn't look like he's out of high school, but apparently he's had some combat tours. That apparently he was Special Forces and whatnot. And so he's talking to this guy and saying that the guy was, the combat veteran was telling him how he had suicidal ideations, etc., that he lost 7 friends to suicide, and I think his father as well, to suicide. And so then CBD is a better remedy than the psychotropic drugs that he was given by his doctors, apparently at the VA. So, and I was thinking immediately, I thought, that's fine and dandy, but how do you prevent this from happening in the first place? How do you reduce, let's put it that way, how do you reduce the amount of people that are going to need any type of drug, including CBD, from the military? And when I was in the military, I remember that I wasn't in Special Forces, I was a clerk, but I was in what was called United States Intelligence Command. And we had, it was a very high clearance place to work. You had to have one of the top clearances in the Air Force. And you worked separate and away from the normal base, and you worked in places that had no windows and that were soundproofed and that kind of thing. So very isolating. And so the same thing is with Special Forces. It's not just about the tools, techniques, and their special skills. It's also about everywhere they're going, the things they're doing are classified. They're highly classified. They're on special missions. They're black ops. That's the words I was looking for. They're black ops, which means you're isolated. You can't talk to just anybody about what it is that you're doing, going to do, or have done. When you have certain clearances, you're responsible for that information for 70 years or until you're dead, whichever comes later. Okay, so again, you're isolated. You can't go home at the end of the day and tell your wife what you did. Hey, how was work? Well, as a matter of fact, I picked up a radio or a transmission, a code, whatever. I got a transmission about troop movements, East German troop movements, and where this division was and that division. You can't do that. She doesn't have it. She doesn't have the clearance. She doesn't have the need to know, and you're not in a skiff, right? So they have that same kind of a problem. They can't talk. They're going and doing things. We're asking them to do things that are, again, kill people and take territory, but we're asking them to kill people, and they can't just come home and tell their wife. They can't come home and tell their parents, this is what I did, this is where I did it. So the stress of that, it stays there. Stays there. He might not even be able to, the combat soldier may not even be able to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, right? Because the psychologist doesn't have the clearance. Okay, and even if he wants to talk about it, even if you have the clearance, then you have to have a need to know, and you could, of course, it's mental health issues, so you can make that work, but then you got to be in a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility. You got to be in a place with no windows, and it's all special. So again, isolation. So whenever you have troubles, you can't talk about them. Gee. People are committing suicide? Go figure. Okay. Asking them to do dirty work and then at the same time failing to provide them with an outlet, a way of discussing their problems. So, and they didn't have anybody. They should have had, even when I was in back, and this is going back some decades, somebody on site, a counselor on site. Somebody you could talk to. And even then, you're still isolated. There's this big wall between you and your family. So, that's that. They have to deal with that. The military has to find a way. One of the things is to start declassifying or reclassifying things so that you don't have as much to bring that wall, help to bring that wall down. There are things that, when I was in, that were way overclassified. People just classification is prestige. You're a colonel or a general. You want to be able to put on your performance report that you're in charge of lots and lots of classified information, right? So. Because again, that's prestige, and so there's a tendency to overclassify, and nobody wants to. If you underclassify and it turns out that information is you made a mistake, then you're in big trouble, and so is the branch of the military you're dealing with. So, safety-wise. Just for the safety's sake, you overclassify. But anyway, so the classification and other things, there's special training. They get all kinds of special training, and there's verbal and nonverbal cues to them that say, you're special, you're unique. And if you're special and unique, who do you go to commiserate? You can do it with other operators, but that's about it. Again, you can't go home to your family. How do you relate now back to your sisters and brothers and your mom and dad when you're able to kill somebody at 1,000 yards? It puts a huge distance between you and everybody else that you know. Isolation. So they should be able to do something. in terms of reducing the isolation for people and, if nothing else, provide on-the-spot help. Have psychologists and psychiatrists in the field, out in the field with these folks to help them out. So, yeah, that was again the from CNBC. That's what I was thinking about watching that program. Thank you. And now the Federalist Papers. That was written by John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and who else here? Well, James Madison, that's it. It's hailed by Thomas Jefferson as the best commentary on the principles of government which was ever written. The Federalist Papers is a collection of 85 essays published by founding fathers Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay from 1787 to 1788 as a means to persuade the public to ratify the Constitution of the United States. With nearly two-thirds of the essays written by Hamilton, this enduring classic is perfect for modern audiences passionate about his work or seeking a deeper understanding of one of the most important documents in U.S. history. Amazon Classics brings you timeless works from iconic authors, ideal for anyone who wants to read a favorite work for the first time or revisit an old favorite. These new editions open the door to the stories and ideas that have shaped our world. About the author, Alexander Hamilton, 1755 to 1804, was a statesman and founding father who served as the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States under President George Washington. Fourth President of the United States, James Madison, 1751 to 1836, is considered, quote, the father of the Constitution, unquote, because of his integral role in drafting and promoting the Constitution and Bill of Rights. A statesman, diplomat, abolitionist, and founding father, John Jay, 1745 to 1829, served as the first Chief Justice of the United States, the second Governor of New York, and played a pivotal role in ratifying the U.S. Constitution. Amazon.com review. This country and this people seem to have been made for each other, and it appears as if the design of Providence, and it appears as if it was the design of Providence, that an inheritance so proper and convenient for a band of brethren should never be split into a number of unsocial, jealous, and alien sovereignties. So wrote John Jay, one of the revolutionary authors of the Federalist Papers, arguing that if the United States was truly to be a single nation, its leaders would have to agree on a universally binding rules of governance. In short, a constitution. In a brilliant set of essays, Jay and his colleagues Alexander Hamilton and James Madison explored in minute detail the implications of establishing a kind of rule that would engage as many citizens as possible and that would include a system of checks and balances. Their arguments proved successful in the end, and the Federalist Papers stand as key documents in the founding of the United States. And that was the Federalist Papers by John Jay, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton. Thank you. And now, On Liberty by John Stuart Mill. It's at Kindle Books. It's 103 pages. A celebration of individuality, diversity, and nonconformity, On Liberty still makes a persuasive argument for what John Stuart Mill believed to be humankind's essential liberties: the freedoms of speech, assembly, and the pursuit of pleasure, so long as one's actions do not impede the liberty of another. These freedoms, he maintained, result in a far more successful society than one ruled by the tyranny of the majority. An exploration of the limits of government over the individual, this treatise on personal liberty has inspired debate since its publication in 1859 and has provided the foundation for modern liberal political thought. And that is On Liberty by John Stuart Mill. Thank you. And now, Against the Tide by Roger Scruton. It is the best of Roger Scruton's columns, commentaries, and criticisms. It is, let's see, it doesn't say how many pages long, but it's not available yet. It's available for pre-order on Amazon. The definitive edition of the late Sir Roger Scruton's philosophical and political essays and reviews, now collected in one volume, edited by Mark Dooley. The philosopher Roger Scruton was the leading conservative thinker of the post-war years. In this book are assembled the very best of his essays and commentaries, arranged thematically. The selection has been made and edited by Mark Dooley, Scruton's literary executor. Throughout this collection, Scruton proves himself to be at his most scintillating and controversial. He writes with passion and conviction about such varied topics as feminism, racism, fascism, Tony Blair, Jeremy Corbyn, and Donald Trump, and takes aim at those who defy conservative common sense in favor of liberal falsehoods. This book shows Scruton at his most brilliant and demonstrates how his influence will remain strong and enduring. And that was Against the Tide, the best of Roger Scruton's columns, commentaries, and criticisms, and it is available for pre-order from Amazon.com. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adieu to the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and it can't win.